Alright, welcome back everybody to Behind the Cards. We had some internet issues, computer issues, whatever it was, but now we're back. Jason is loud and clear again, so we're going to resume. I believe we were talking about Worlds 2010, right?
Yeah, did I win that one?
You won a couple before that. I don't know about that one.
Ah.
Yeah, why don't you actually walk us through what happened that year? You didn't do the greatest, but what deck did you choose, and actually what did happen?
I played in the LCQ with the Dialga Garchomp deck, a great solid deck. Real strategic deck too, especially. I remember the Dialga Garchomp Mirror was probably like one of the most skill-intensive matchups we've ever had in the game.
Let me tell
Um,
you, that was not a fun matchup. Played
Yeah,
a lot.
it was tricky. That might be probably one of the toughest matchups, other than the Chandelure mirror from last year. That one might be the ultimate like chess match. But I qualified in the LCQ despite a loss to Yamato, and then I switched over to what I truly thought was the best deck. It was a little riskier. It was a Sableye Garchomp deck. Now, when I say Garchomp, I'm talking about the SP Pokemon, the basic. And the idea was turn one to disrupt their hand by using Sableye's Impersonate to play a Team Galactic's initiative.
Cyrus.
So you Cyrus's. That's what I thought at first. Cyrus's initiative, and you'd flip two coins, and for each heads, you'd put a card from their hand on the bottom of their deck. So decks were so fast then. You had broken time space, rare candy. People would get turn one Claydol. So you'd look for the most important part of their hand that they needed, whether it be the Uxie or the rare candy, and you'd bottom deck it. And in those couple turns they stall. Pokemon's always been a game where you give up, a turn or two of not doing something productive, you lose. So very quickly, and just Sableye's ability to let you play first, so you automatically get to stop them from doing all that stuff. It was too good in my opinion. And I don't think my list was perfect. There were a couple changes that year that I would have made to my list. And nobody really liked the format there. I remember you didn't do well that year a lot, and the top cut that year was just full of people we hadn't even heard of. So a lot of good players were really discouraged. And from that point forward, I think you saw a big turning point almost in the game around that year, where the game seemed to become really luck based. And it wasn't necessarily the format changing; it was just people getting better. So with people getting better, the luck naturally just goes up, and we've seen that the last 2 years. People keep complaining about the format, but it really is more of the players getting better than the format itself.
Yeah, I thought that format was still fairly good in terms of being skill based. It was the SP format, one of them at least, and then we had the finals was Pramawat against Yuta. Do you think that was maybe the best? Well, first of all, were you there to watch it?
Yeah. I might have stepped out briefly, but yeah, it's Prema was one of the few good players along with Yuta to actually get in that year, and nobody realized how good Yuta was, before that, because he hadn't had that much success. I mean, he top four worlds, but that was, you had two good players left standing, which was always cool. But of course, I know the story. A heartbreaking loss for Pramawat. That close.
Yeah, it was his self-proclaimed greatest comeback of all time, where he loses.
Yeah, I never really understood how that was really a comeback, but call it what you want. It was unfortunate for him.
Do you think that goes down as one of the most heartbreaking moments of all time? The top decked Uxie level X.
Yeah, that's got to be up there. I think his facial expression is what does it. anytime someone's head goes back 90 degrees backwards, they're not excited about something.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest moments in the history of the game. I think that was just kind of one of those images where you see it and you know that, yep, that's exactly what happened.
I'm pretty sure that's on billboards in Tokyo. If you go downtown Tokyo, that image is probably plastered all over.
Probably Yuta's got a poster of it on his wall. So after 2010, another world goes by. You didn't do that well that year. 2011 rolls around. You do very well for the entire season, and then Nationals, the format changes, and then what happens there?
Nationals, that format, there are a lot of turn one wins. So I remember I got turn one twice by a Tyro, which was just really disappointing. Actually, I think one was a Tyro, the other one might have been something else. But so that I don't end up qualifying for Worlds, despite another decent year doing well. Nationals is weighted heavily, and I don't do well there, so I don't get the points needed to qualify. And then I am playing at the LCQ again with Magnazonia and Mega, the same deck.
Yeah,
I played a lot with you that year actually too. We played that matchup a lot, and that was a deck that it was kind of just a curious thing. Like we heard about it doing well in Canada, and we're like, well, what's so great about it? And then we ended up playing it more, and it ended up being much better than we thought it would be.
yeah. How did the LCQ go for you that year?
Oh, the LCQ was heartbreaking. It was that 45-minute best 2 out of 3 format, which I just have no idea like what was going on when they did that. I mean, at that point, you're better off just doing one game. I don't think I saw a single series of 3 full games play in 45 minutes. It can't happen. I remember being what ended up being 1 round away from the invite, and I won a game 1, and game 2 I've got pretty much wrapped up. Since it's 45 minutes, I kind of alter my strategy. I play a little riskier. I'm more concerned about getting prize cards. I'm not trying to get 6 prize cards. I'm just trying to make sure that something fluky doesn't happen where I play too conservative and he ends up going up a prize, when time gets called, and I end up losing that way. So I end up using Magnazone's Lost Burn a couple times, its attack, and end up removing a lot of energy in play just to make sure I get those knockouts. Now, if we're playing an on-time game, I don't do that because I'll run out of energy and I'm not going to be able to get the last prize. But knowing we're playing 45 minutes, I play a little riskier. And I feel like I've got this game wrapped up completely. There's not even the possibility of losing isn't even in my mind. There's probably, I think, like a few minutes left because it's 45 minutes. It ends so quickly, and game 1 was lengthy. So next thing I know, my opponent's playing a Sage. I'm just sitting there, waiting to advance, basically. And he discards 2 cards from Sage. But those of you that played that year will remember Sage's training. You'd look at the top 5 cards, you'd pick 2, and you'd discard 3. So I'm like, well, where's the 3rd card? And he looks in his hand, he's just like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, did you accidentally take 3 cards? So while we're discussing it, a judge overhears, and he comes over. And the judge had a very passive approach. I don't think he handled the situation well at all. And from this point forward, he would not handle it any better. But I basically had to intervene after about a minute of the judge just standing there looking at us, telling him what we should do. And knowing, time, there's so little time left. I don't want to even look like a bad sport. I say I did feel it was accidental, and I'm like, look, you probably just took a 3rd card, just discard 1 from your hand, and as we discuss that, time gets called. So at this point, who cares? He can't win. I'm up 2 prizes, and it shouldn't matter. So we end up doing that. They don't even give him a warning or anything. He discards a card, and the judge is like. The judge is a European judge. He decides that we're going to have a time extension for the ruling, and he decides that the time extension is going to be. He says 6 minutes, and now I'm getting really nervous. When I hear 6 minutes, because I'm like, 6 minutes is a lot of time. Now what if my strategy backfires? I discard all this energy, and I don't even know if that took 6 minutes, but I think time was actually called like in the middle of our discussion. So I think it was something like a little bit earlier than I had described. So like we were talking perhaps for 2 minutes. Time got called. We talked about it another 4, and then that might be 6 minutes, but I don't think the judge understood that you don't add that time back on past the clock. Like even though it took 6 minutes, there were only 2 minutes left in the game, so you can't add more than 2 minutes to the game. So I politely object, but due to what I think it was a language barrier that caused the confusion, I tell him that there's no way that took 6 minutes, and I didn't phrase it clearly enough. He misinterprets what I'm saying. He thinks I'm asking for more time. And he looks at me and he kind of smiles and he's like, okay, 8 minutes. And I go, no, you misunderstood. And meanwhile, the head judge walks over and he wasn't here. So all he can end up going by is what the other judge says. And I tried explaining it, but he just asked the other judge, he's like, well, how long did it take? And the European judge interrupts. He goes, 8 minutes. I looked at watch. No, he looked at the watch if he said 6 minutes first, but that 8 minutes ended up being just enough time for him to hit some reversals, and he got 2 flips that went his way, and he ended up tying it at the last his time expired, and then in +3, I was out of energy, and he won. So now we're going into sudden death, and what's awful about sudden death is they have this rule where it doesn't matter if you lost, you flip a coin. Now, the first game, he won the flip. He played second. I won. He played first, excuse me. I won that game. He gets to go first again the second game. Now we're going to sudden death. He wins the flip, and he gets to go first for the 3rd time in a row, which is why I hate the sudden death flip rule, but, that's another subject. So, anyway, I draw average hand, I think something I could work with, and he's playing a Typhlosion next, so in the in the mirror, not the mirror, excuse me, in this match, I have an advantage. I'm just faster. It's easy for me to get a prize. Well, he actually gets a turn 2 reversal heads, and just turn 2 gets a prize and knocks me out, and I lose. So that was pretty heartbreaking going down like that. And we needed to win one more game after that to get the invite, but they ended up surprising the players and giving the invites out to everyone that won that round. So that just made it even more disappointing. Not his fault or anything. It was just a result of judges make mistakes, and I think the language barrier. I don't think the judge his first language wasn't English, so just the cultural difference. We didn't communicate effectively. But yeah, that was heartbreaking that year. And then I watched my friends play. I watched Sammy play. I was rooting for him, and he had his heartbreaking loss to Ross that year. So that was the year of the heartbreak.
In terms of the game overall, would you say that was like your lowest point in terms of just like emotionally things going on in your life, that kind of stuff?
Oh no. I think since I've been fortunate enough to win 2 worlds, I've been lucky in Pokemon. So no matter how lucky I get or how unfortunate, you run in a game, it's still just a game that I've had, tremendous success and luck with. So I never feel too disappointed. No, when I say it was heartbreaking, I'm exaggerating. I mean that lightheartedly. Of course, it's disappointing to not play, but no, there's never been a point in Pokemon where I was just like, emotionally distraught or so disappointed. I just wanted to, give up. The low point for me would actually be when Wizards was trying to get rid of 15 plus, and they're just trying over and over. And I see my friend win this tournament, and they barely even give him credit. And I remember somebody was citing an old article I wrote when I was like 16. It's basically just me ranting, and I finished. I'm playing Magic, and I actually did go play Magic for a while, but with Pokemon at the same time too, pretty much. But it just didn't have the same friendly player base that Pokemon had, and I didn't stick with Magic too long. I played a little Magic recently because I like card games, but truly I feel like this Pokemon is overlooked. Like, people don't realize that Magic is actually full of luck of the draw, and the player base in Pokemon makes it my favorite game.
All right, so if Pokemon ever really does go under, if it's just not an option to play anymore, what would you do with like your free time then? Would you switch over to Magic?
Magic or chess. I mean, I've played card games now for the last half of my life, so it's inevitable that you get annoyed by the luck factor sometimes. And playing poker for a living and seeing $1,000 decided by a river card, you get annoyed with luck. So you kind of want to play something more skillful. And usually I don't devote too much time to chess just because it's something that you could spend infinite time on and never be the best at. And also, the only chess that we play online is speed chess, so it's hard for me to transition to what I used to play, which was slower, to these 1-minute blitz games where I'm just arbitrarily moving pieces. I just checkmate after a few turns because I'm not used to that. So that's kind of, I guess, discouraging for learning a new game. But I don't know. I think I would probably do another card game, or heck, even we assume that we need this nice play to play Pokemon, but what about when the game first came out in '99 and 2000? There were hardly any big tournaments. We had our own local things, and we still had fun. So maybe we just play and we do our own thing. I mean, as long as there's enough interest, we could run our own private. There's enough people that play Pokemon where the game really can't die. I don't think we need a company to set up tournaments for us. I think it's nice to have, but if we didn't have Wizards of the Coast or the TPCI, I think players would collectively get together and organize something themselves.
All right, so continuing on that topic, what do you see for the future of Pokemon? Do you see things ever really changing to the point where, like Magic has all these big tournaments, they have all this great coverage, or do you just see Pokemon just kind of staying the way it has been all these years?
I'm a combination of optimistic and pessimistic. I think I'm optimistic about some things, pessimistic about others. What you do has definitely helped, spread the game interest, and I love that. And I think a lot of us are really optimistic about Pokemon TCG Online, and unfortunately, that's just it's not going in the right direction still, and that's a disappointing thing because I think most of us recognize the potential it has, and I think you realize that that's something that's ever going to just grow the game again out of nowhere. Like Pokemon has steadily, very slowly increased, it seems, like at Nationals, U.S. Nationals every year we get a few more people, but if you're looking for a big boom, I don't see that coming from somewhere other than online. So we're all relying on this online program to be efficient, to work right, to have prizes, to have tournaments, to have some kind of marketplace, and we're just not getting any of that. And I think a lot of people, including myself, are losing their patience. As much as I want to be optimistic, it's hard to remain optimistic when you see, after 2 years nearly, just not getting what we want. But I mean, I'll still wait, we'll still wait, and meanwhile we could try to spread interest in the game. I do it on a single-handed basis where I'll meet somebody playing Magic, like, oh, you play Pokemon? I heard you won Worlds. What's that game like? And I'll tell them, like, well, bring me a theme deck and let's play sometime. I want to play some tournaments. So you grow the game slowly like that. But we really need to see that community and game take off to grow.
Hey, now, continuing off that, I mean, you are someone who has actually given back to the game quite a bit. I mean, after you won Worlds in 2008, you went on that trip. Where was it, to Kansas City?
Yeah, we went to Kansas City and to England. I played with a bunch of younger kids. That's always fun. I enjoy it just as much as they do. It's fun because they get excited, and you play with them help, and that goes back to what I was saying about like Scott. I used to look up to him, so I think it's really fun for the kids. It makes it more enjoyable when you see how much fun they're having. But it's not even something I enjoy. You enjoy Pokemon. It almost becomes like a passion. It becomes almost like an extended family. It's almost just like hanging out with your family, almost. Playing Pokemon. Even if they're strangers, you have that Pokemon bond. It's just such a friendly game that you can just get along and meet people, make friends.
On that trip you went with Chuck and Inch, I believe. What has it been like to have just kind of friends who live somewhat close by, who have just stuck with the game as long as you have? They've been interested in it as long as you have. Do you think that's helped you along the years just kind of continue with Pokemon?
Oh yeah, of course. Friendship. Pokemon is a game of friendship. That's what I view it as. If you ever wanted to ask me something where I wouldn't play Pokemon, it wouldn't even be the last tournaments. It'd be friends stop playing. Every friend I have, all my closest friends I've met through Pokemon, whether I met, when I was 14, like Alex Brousseau, or more recently, I met a lot of people, Christopher Miller, John Vivros, and a lot of other people in Florida. There's just so many cool Pokemon people everywhere, and you just meet more and more. I even, met some people from Chicago. We didn't talk much before. And then you talk to people, and you meet other people in Indiana and nearby states, and everybody you talk to in Pokemon is just so friendly. So, that's really what keeps me, and I'm sure a lot of others playing, is just that friendly atmosphere you have in Pokemon that's unique to it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, number one reason everyone always gives for playing Pokemon is the community, so no surprise there. Now, I mean, we're pretty much getting to the end of the questions I have for you, but what are your goals from here moving forward? I mean, you've won Worlds twice. I've probably mentioned that like 20 times already, but you've won the biggest tournaments. What are your goals from here in Pokemon?
I would like to win a third Worlds title. I think that would be my ultimate goal. A third Worlds title, just really just is a accomplishment to just cement yourself and prove that it wasn't just luck, that you knew what you're doing. And I'd like to say a Nationals win. I think I'm getting too greedy if I say Nationals and Worlds, so I'll hope for one of those. Nationals, I say just because I know it's the hardest tournament. Every year, Nationals is the hardest tournament in the world, and the year following, it's just a harder tournament. So beating over 1,000 people and all those players is just the greatest accomplishment, the most difficult accomplishment. It might not get recognized as that, but U.S. Nationals is the most difficult tournament to win. But this year Worlds, we're gonna have a very big player base probably at Worlds because of the invite structure. It seems like they'll have a lot of invites this year, so that would be a great tournament to win because it's going to be very competitive. This will be the hardest world champ this year. I think we'll have the hardest national championship and the most difficult world championship as well.
All right, well, that's pretty much all I have for my questions. We have some questions from viewers, though, so we'll wrap up this show with some of those. First one I have is from Derek Cranky, a player from Wisconsin. He wants to know, what is your most memorable Pokemon TCG event besides Worlds?
I know Derek.
Yeah, Derek likes to brag that he's got like an undefeated record over you in pre-releases.
We have to end pre-releases. We're gonna have to go to pre just to end that streak. Most memorable tournament. I would probably say, anything you do well at, you're gonna remember. So I remember the Worlds win in 2008. I think that was all my friends were there watching, and I think I genuinely felt their excitement when I won. I got to do a lot of high fives after I won and autograph signing, and the excitement seemed genuine that year. I heard my friends cheering for me, so that really was a great moment for me, and I'd say that's my most memorable tournament. But maybe also the Tropical Mega Battle in 2000 because like the Orlando area wasn't particularly exciting. Most people just stayed inside because it was so humid. The reasons I got out of Florida, the humidity was getting to my brain. But that first big tournament, the Tropical Mega Battle for me, seeing Hawaii win, that probably too. That in 2008, it would be hard for me to make a decision between those two.
All right. Well, he said besides Worlds, so we'll go with the Tropical Mega Battle one.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear besides. So Mega Battle for sure then.
All right. Next question is from Gabriel Wiltenberg, who asks, "What is your favorite deck ever, and what is the least favorite deck you ever played?"
The favorite deck I ever played. Wow, that's tough. It's weird. It's not necessarily some. I really like the Medicine X deck in 2005, but it's not necessarily the decks I did well with. There were decks that were just fun to play, even if they didn't win. In the same year, 2005, we had I called it ZRE. It was Zapdos EX, Rayquaza, and Electrode. And the Electrode was an EX where you could knock it out and get 5 energy from your discard pile. So with all the cards that benefited from going down in prizes, namely that format, we had Rockets Admin, which was just like N today, and then we had POW Hand Extension, which is basically a Pokemon catcher, but could only be used if you're losing. So you could blow up Electrode, and then going down in prizes, you get all the tricks of being able to, lower their hand size, play the POW Hand Extension. That deck was pretty fun for me to play. I loved Medicham EX too that same year because you think so hard where to put the damage counters with that pure power attack. So I like that strategy element, and it was consistent. It's always fun to play a deck that actually sets up. Not like some of the more inconsistent decks we've seen, like LBS, which it's powerful when it sets up, and then 1 in 5 games you just draw the hand, you look at it, and you pass. So pretty much. I mean, I enjoyed playing almost every deck, to be honest. Every form when it comes to a least favorite deck, I'm trying to think like a year that I was forced to play something inconsistent. That would probably be.
Well, not even a deck you play. What is like your least favorite archetype of all time, maybe?
And I played. Oh, geez. So in 2006, inconsistency just turns me off really bad. So in 2006, you'd have Flareados. That was probably the most inconsistent archetype of all modified history that I could think of. That deck was now. Even if you set up, you could still just flip bad on Super Scoop Up and lose. And then you also had LBS. I think it was one of the most overrated decks of all time. And that deck just drew a lot of unplayable hands. So even though it was good when it set up, it just did not. I mean, you're running too many evolutions. It was 2 stage 2s and a stage 1. And if you didn't get out that Pidgeot, that stage 2 that let you search for things, you were just going to lose quite quickly. So I never liked the LBS deck in 2006, even though it was probably the most successful deck. I also hated that in 2007. And I was just playing a game in regionals because somebody had a Meta Knight deck from a 7 and Henry Pryor had a Benetti X deck, and I drew a horrendous hand with Benetti X and still almost won just because that Meta Knight deck, it always runs out of energy. It would discard energy, and then it would just, when it gets time to draw that last prize or two, you run out of energy using Metagross's Crash and Burn. The Dragonite's attack is pretty weak, so you're always forced to discard the energy and just run out of energy. So I didn't like that deck either. And one other deck I didn't like was that Absolutions deck in 2007. I never played it much. It did attract some good players, like Eric Craig played it, so I second-guessed how good it was because I never was a fan, but the fact that Eric and I think Sam Sakum played it made me second-guess how good it actually may have been. But I don't know, I just didn't find that deck particularly consistent either.
Did win Nationals and Worlds that year.
It's weird. Sometimes I think it's just the way my brain works. I like decks that have a very set strategy where they don't have to deviate and where your win is kind of like a clean, played-out strategy. And that deck had to be improvised. Like if you had to explain your strategy with that deck, it wasn't, attack with this, use this on this turn. It was just kind of, you draw the evolutions, you hope to have them at the right time. Sometimes you that, and then the damage just kind of adds up, and it's weird because it definitely had a tremendous room of strategy, but it almost turned me off how much strategy it had. Perhaps I just didn't play it enough. But you add that deck, which I didn't find particularly consistent, and then it just makes it a headache for me, and I never liked it.
All right, next question is from Justin Phillips. Basically, his question is: you were pretty vocal about Durant being a very, very bad deck, and in fact, you said it was like the worst archetype of all time. What eventually changed your mind to lead you to play that deck?
You know, I just met Justin. I like him, really cool kid. He showed me a Facebook message where he'd messaged me and I responded for knowing him. He's like, "What do you think of Durant?" And I wrote back, I'm like, "Just take my word, the deck's horrible." And it's funny when I bashed on Durant, I actually had never played the deck. I'll admit it. Just historically in Pokemon, I understood the concept of the deck. That when you focus trying to deck people, I was thinking back to Fossil Moltres, for example. Your only strategy is trying to energy rule and deck people. It just doesn't work. They just all they need to do is power up one thing. You eventually run out of things to get all your energy removals and stuff like that. Crushing Hammer's a flip, so what good can they do? But the reason Durant ends up being good is it's a combination of things. For one, it has twins is just a monster card in the deck. Being able to search out two Crushing Hammers or a Crushing Hammer and a supporter. And then you also have a lot of disruptive items. So not only do you have Crushing Hammer, but you have Pokemon Catcher and you have Junk Arm to reuse those. So, those end up making the deck good. I kind of overlooked how strong of a factor that would be. And when did I realize it was good? I think I got used to it first before it was good. You played me with it on Apprentice, and we had games. I remember Apprentice is just a program you play Magic on that account I've played on before, and I lost to it at a battle a couple times. I remember one time we played a game the Truth against it, and this was in Florida, and I actually lost without drawing a prize. So, I mean, that was a terrible match for the deck, but I actually drawn a prize. So I started playing Durant, and then I think I came up with was just a almost perfect list. I really tweaked it. Done that a lot of seasons where I play the same deck, and the list just becomes really solid. And I was just really comfortable with the deck. And the only thing I regret is not adding a 1/1 Weavile line to it. But I mean, there were cards in it that I figured out the end were just ridiculous, like Smooch 'em. If I didn't figure it out too late, but you play that in your match and you just keep moving their energy to one Durant, and eventually one of their Durants gets stranded active and they can't do anything. And you might, fall, behind. They might get 20 cards off your deck, but eventually they run out of energy. They can't play twins, and Durant stop. You just win. So there were some things that took me a while to figure out, but it ended up being an incredibly good deck. It could have been the best deck in the format that year for a while.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a deck everyone was afraid of at the very least. Nobody liked being decked out, that's for sure.
Durant, one guy that plays around Chicago, and he switched his deck to Typhlosion just to play Durant, and he just walks around, he would just curse, he would just say, Durant. He just hated Durant, so I always joke with him about Durant when I see him.
Alright, the next question is actually from the Six Prizes Twitter account. Are there any players who have ever put you on tilt, or is there anything in general at tournaments that will put you on tilt?
I'm declumping. I mean, there's nothing really that gets under my skin. Like, any quirks or I'm pretty tolerant. I mean, I've played a lot of poker tables, so you meet a lot of characters. Alex Brissot always jokes that the poker tables are kind of like a Guess Who board. You meet so many characters. So I'm pretty I mean, you're going to meet characters in Pokemon. I mean, we have our Jonathan Banks, always wearing his fox costume, tail and everything. No, nothing really bothers me. When somebody shuffles their deck before a game, and then when it's time to cut, they look and then start stacking or weaving their deck. Of course, I mean, I don't like that. I think most people have come to the realization of why that's bad if they didn't before. But no, it doesn't really annoy me where I'm going to become vocal or visibly upset. I'm pretty tough. People that know me know I'm very cool-headed. So there's things that, of course, are going to annoy me just like anybody else. But I don't have, short of somebody ripping up my card, after playing it on the table, I'm not going to get too upset.
Is there anything you're embarrassed about that you've done at maybe a tournament over the years?
Yeah. Do I have to say it? I mean,
if it's really bad, you don't. But
I remember at the tournament in Chicago in 2002 or 2003, I was talking with a kid, and I was also having a conversation on the side while we were playing, and I got excited about something and laughed, and my gum fell out of my mouth, and it landed on his active camera. He was a very quiet kid, and he just looks up at me. He's like, "Well, that wasn't very nice." So I go to pick up the gum, and it just picks up his whole Kingdra, and the Kingdra falls off the table, and there's so that was pretty embarrassing. I never saw him again after that, so I hope that wasn't his last time playing Pokemon with somebody spitting gum on his cards. I've had some horrible misplays, just like anybody else. I remember I was playing a game in Chicago too, where I thought I had lost no matter what. I had to try to stop a knockout. And the last second, I come up with this idea that I can send up my 90 hit point for it to take a hit. I had no energy on it, so I finally retreat, and I pass. And then after I pass, I realized it has a 0 energy attack. I could have just searched my deck for any 2 cards. I figured it wouldn't matter. I'm going to probably lose next turn. Turns out he doesn't have the energy or whatever he needs to win, and if I would have just used that attack, I would have won. And after the game, my friend Matt Moss jokes. He's like, wow. I'm thinking to myself, he's so good. He's so good that he didn't use Kenai because he doesn't want him to play a Rockets admin and shuffle his hand back into the deck. And I watch, and he just passes, and he just loses. What is going on? And he's laughing. He's just all red as he's bursting into laughter, telling me what happened. And so, I always joke that I don't misplay much, but when I do, I'm going to make it worthwhile.
All right. Next question we got is, let's see, from Reed Melton, who asks, or he says, "You're one of the most consistent players of all time. How do you go about building your decks to focus on consistency? And is that more of your playstyle?"
Yeah, of course. I've always favored consistent decks. And I think naturally, if you're confident in your ability to play well in a game, you're going to want a consistent deck because you know that if you can set up, you're going to play better than your opponent, and even if they have more options in their deck or drew better than you, they're more likely to make a mistake that can give you the game. So consistency is something. I noticed right away when I built the Haymaker when I was 13. Why the game was good? It's because it did the same thing over and over. So when I took that concept and I started building new decks with other cards, like I had other Haymaker like Pokemon or Wigglytuff decks, I would start my decks off. Oh, I know I need 4 Computer Search. I need 4 Professor Oak, and that's the reprint of Computer Search and Professor Juniper. So those were the cards that let you set up. So I've never played a deck that was inconsistent. I'm trying to think of the most inconsistent deck that I've played much of, and it would probably just be like even decks that are inconsistent by nature, like a lot of Vileplume decks last format were inconsistent. Like I played the Vanillix Vileplume variants are a little bit inconsistent, but I would make the list right. 4 relevant, 4 Mew EX, and 4 Collector, and a lot of energy, a lot of ways to search out Vanillix and Unfezant because it was so important to me to actually set up. So when I put that game, I try to make sure everything has a purpose. Everything fits together as synergy, so I don't have a lot of extra unnecessary cards because that's where you lose your consistency. I'd rather have the extra draw card, the extra rare candy, the extra consistency card.
All right, we got a couple more questions, and then we'll just wrap up. This question is from Alton Adderhold. Is there extra pressure on you since you're a 2-time world champion? And how do you handle the pressures of just, people expecting you to do well all the time?
It's not necessarily extra pressure, but you get more attention. So, anytime you lose a game, people want to know, how did you lose? Win a big game, well, what was it like? How did you win? Just like anybody, I could, get for a big game, but there really are no big games in Pokemon anymore for me. It's the only real big games to me are going into the top 2 of Worlds. So I don't feel the pressure of a big match. I've been playing too long for the most part, and I just did the game so fun. I just really enjoy playing, and so maybe there's pressure because people want to know how I did, and they want to know what how I played, how I performed. But I don't really feel it so much. To me, I'm just playing Pokemon. I'm having fun.
All right, and our last question to wrap up the show is going to be someone from the chat who wants to know, what's your favorite Pokemon?
My favorite Pokemon, I think, is Mew. I've always said Merker because I remember how ridiculous that card was back in the Neo days. But Mew, it's just one of those cool things. It's this little fly. It looks cool. It's small, but it's so powerful, and it has that mysterious into it. So if I have to pick a favorite Pokemon, I always go Mew. If you want, if you have time, I have a few more minutes. If you want to pick out another, 3 or 4 questions, I don't mind. If there were a couple questions people were um, looking to get answered, I don't know if you have any more or not, but I don't mind.
Trying to hog the spotlight, huh? I'm kidding. All right. I do have one more that I missed. Sorry. It's from Stephen Mason, who wants to know, what do you think is the single worst thing that the Pokemon Company International has done, and what's the best thing you think they've done?
Um, I can only name one bad thing.
You can pick as many as you want.
The absolute worst thing. It's weird. The best and worst thing they've done is actually the same thing. I'd say it's Pokemon Online, because on one hand the idea is the best thing the game's ever seen probably because it has the potential to grow the game. But then on the same hand, they're not giving it the resources it needs. They just launched a new project and everyone was excited, or at least I was excited. Oh, it's an application now. Now it's not going to freeze the computer. Well, uses just as much memory, if not more. Everything's really slow. There's still glitches. Kyle and I just played a game, and after an hour of trying to figure out how the trade works, and Dark Cloak just stops working, I get stuck with a turret active. So those are the kind of things that are really going to turn you off. If you're somebody playing and you just spent the money, you got your codes, and you play, and you can't even play your game. So I really feel like that isn't getting the attention it deserves, whether it's the resources, the budget, or just competent people who know how to program the game. I've heard Kyle said before that he thinks that people that program the game just don't know how to play. Well, they should know how to play. That should be the first thing they should sit down and spend a week playing, so they don't overlook things like Dark Cloak doesn't work on this Pokemon or something. But if I had to name another thing outside of Pokemon TCG Online, everything Pokemon's done that's mimicking Magic has been really good. Everything that gears the tournament towards a big competitive thing and spotlight, having the big world tournament, the print the decks, publicize things, give attention to the game, get prizes, things like that draw interest in the game. So just like you hope Pokemon Online would, the things that are good for the game are the things that draw interest in it. And the only other bad thing outside of online is that I'm not a fan of the time limits. Like the fact that they could even do 45 minutes of tournament still is a joke. It's just insulting to the game. And fortunately, we're seeing that get turned into 75 at the. So I'm really happy with that.
All right. We got a question from, I think it's Kurt Rosales. I don't know if it's Kurt or Kyle. One of them. I don't actually know what he's asking about, but apparently you probably know. What do you think about Toontown?
Toontown is just a game his brother used to play on the computer, and his little brother would be playing, and I was like, "What game is that?" So I'm texting his older brother, and he's like, "What's Cowdom?" I'm like, "Oh, he's playing Toontown." Like, you cannot tell him I'm playing Toontown. He gets so angry when I play. Please, I'm playing Toontown. But the fact that you asked me that kind of silly question, I think you got to ask me a couple more Pokemon ones, because somebody who asks a Pokemon question is going to be mad that I answered that.
We got to throw in some easy ones here and there.
A few more.
All right, let's see. What is your favorite format ever? I think you already kind of answered it, but go ahead.
2005. You had so many different decks that year. You had Metacham EX, Ludicrous, Dark Tyranitar, ZRE, Turn 2 Zapdos stack, a Nidoqueen deck, Mucky X. Those that didn't play don't know what I'm talking about, but you can Metacham EX, Mucky X, Electrode EX, Pidgeot, Fire Red Leaf Green. Those I think I played Dark Dragon. I dragged her, except it was missing Rainbow Energy, so it was weaker. But just tons of decks, and the fact that the supporters were in your control, like you could manipulate how many cards your opponent drew, added a lot of skill to the game.
All right. Trying to find another question here. Sorry.
Or we'll do 3 more.
We got, what is your favorite starter Pokemon from any of the generations?
Now we talking cards. I don't play the video games too much, but the starter Pokemon. I guess.
So we're talking. All right, I'll list them off for you if you don't remember.
So you would know. Go ahead.
All right, we got Bulbasaur, Charmander, Squirtle, the original ones. Totodile, Chikorita, and Cyndaquil. Then we have Torchic, Mudkip, and what's the Sceptile's basic? Why can't I remember it?
No, that's not me. That's
what I was thinking of.
get mad at you. Subtiles basic is the how many people are spamming.
Trico.
Yeah.
Then, jeez, what was after that? That drained my resources. I can't remember anymore.
You have asked about the Tepig and the Snipe too, but I do have a Chikorita sticker on my phone. It's funny. I was just at Starbucks and they have a pay with a phone app, so I held up the phone and the cashier's like, "Oh, nice Chikorita." I was like, "You know what? That was pretty funny."
I missed Piplup, Turtwig, and Chimchar.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I don't like. Oshawott I think is really stupid looking. Of course, anybody who's played from the beginning has to like the original one. So I like Bulbasaur and Charmander. I guess I like Chikorita too, and I guess Tepig too, because every time I see somebody, every once in a while I see a Tepig plush doll. There's one kid that always carries around a Tepig big doll. I always confront him. I tell him, I'm like, we're gonna roast that thing. We're gonna have a big Tepig feast, and he always laughs really uncomfortably. He's like, why do you always say that? So, yeah.
Someone on our Facebook page wants to know. He says, "Jason, you're the person I look up to for strategy in the game." And he's just wondering, how do you prepare for tournaments?
Well, thank you. It's funny. It's not so much playing as much as I like to just set out a deck on the floor and almost just stare at it. It's kind of done this since I was 13 years old, but every once in a while you have an aha moment where you change something. And just recently, since regionals, I was playing just a Darkrai Sableye deck, 4 Darkrai, 4 Sableye, and there were a couple issues I ran into with that deck. Crushing Hammer lost a lot of strength. I was playing 4 of those, so I'm like, what can I play instead of Crushing Hammer? And more recently, I had some aha moments where I really like the changes I've made, and I'm hoping the deck will still be good in this next format because I really want to try out the changes that I've made to the deck. I really think I have the BDI best deck in form right now. I'm that confident.
Alright, what's your favorite evolution?
Well, I mean, if you're a card game player, you kind of get annoyed by Glaceon because you don't have an ice type, so we have to have 2 water type. Even if Glaceon looks cool, you always got to be partial to the original one. So I would think I would say either Jolteon or Flareon. Unfortunately, when I think of those, I would say Jolteon's the coolest looking, but I think the original Jolteon cards and like Dark Jolteon, 50 hit points, how bad it took a while before we got a playable Jolteon or Flareon. And I had the Jolteon Star at World, so I gotta say Jolteon, right? Played that in Banette and those, so we'll make it Jolteon. It's got the cool yellow spikes, so.
I always liked the Dark Flareon, the first one that had 50 hit points, and they gave it an attack. They gave Rage, which does more damage if you have damage on you already.
Oh.
So it's like, when are you ever gonna have damage on your 50 hit point Pokemon to actually use that attack?
That thing gets one hit KO'd by like a Squirtle even can just take that thing out. Yeah, I don't know what they were thinking with some of those cards.
Yeah. Someone from the chat wants to know, what advice would you give to someone just trying to kind of break into competitive play?
Everything's best resources you have are online now. If you're starting to play, you can just go on the Pokegym's probably your best bet. You go online, read the forums. There's people. Pokemon. The great thing about Pokemon is that you don't really have to seek out the help. It comes to you naturally. People actually come up to you and be like, I'll help you, build a deck, and you have the list. You have all the articles online. People tell you if you go to a tournament, here's what to expect. So basically, the online community is where you go when you're looking to start. After that gives you an idea. You show up at a tournament, and even there, people help you. From that point, you don't have to try. It's natural. You make friends. That's what's so great about the game. To do too much.
Yeah, that's good advice. Can't really say anything better than that. Michael Martindale asked, first he says he's a very big fan, and he just wants you to elaborate more on your poker career, like where you started off, what kind of stakes you played at, and what do you like and dislike about poker.
Again, I just because I was successful in Pokemon in high school, people had their little poker games where they play for a few dollars, and I saw it seemed like there was strategy in it. So and I picked up books and I saw the strategy, I got excited about it. And I'm like Pokemon, I learned all the strategies, I win. So of course I like the strategic element to it. What I dislike, of course, is the luck factor is overwhelming, and just with people getting better, gotten better at poker too. But the difference in poker is there's so much luck that when you take good players, there's literally almost no skill in the game. Versus Pokemon, a great player versus a good player, you can outplay them. You still have opportunities to have a better deck. But in poker, you take one of the world's best players and then somebody who just played online for a year, and the world's best players got that advantage. It's so small. So when people ask me about starting up poker, getting into it, I tell them to do something else. It's if you started early. You were fortunate because you had a chance to make more money before people knew all the strategies. Now everyone's trying to stay ahead of each other, and the difference between the best players and the second best just gets smaller and smaller, and you're always paying what's called rake in poker, so your advantage is just quickly by that nowadays, and it just ends up getting monotonous. You need incredible patience. You can lose for 6 months straight no matter how well you play. So when somebody's starting poker, like seriously, I tell them, don't bother. It's find better to do with your time. Contribute to society is the idea put in my head.
All right, now earlier you said that Pokemon helped you in poker, but has the opposite happened? Has poker helped you at all in your Pokemon?
A tiny bit. It helped me just when I would want to compute odds of starting with a certain basic or something. But I mean, even knowing the exact numbers of that doesn't really, tell you to make a change to a deck. But I mean, there's a little bit of body language reading in Pokemon, I guess. When you're trying to gauge their hand strength, you could look at their physical tells. Are they comfortable? They have a good hand, or are they uncomfortable? Are they fidgeting? Back in the day, I remember people used to sometimes eye their discard pile if they drew an item finder. So you might have played a last and got rid of their trainers, and then on the second turn, they drew an item finder. Now they have 2 cards in their hand. Now, item finder is just a reprint of junk arm. You need 3 cards to play it. But if you knew they drew that item finder, you could play another trainer denial card like last, which shuffle the trainers in the deck. So you see them look at the discard pile, and then you hit them with another, last or rocket sneak attack, which gets rid of their trainer, so then next turn they're not able to get back a trainer they needed. So there's a couple instances where I've used that. Makes a very, very small difference in Pokemon compared to poker.
Yeah, has there ever been a moment where you've like bluffed somebody into like maybe like they play an N or something and give you a new hand?
I think maybe sometimes I've thought I was trying to do something like that, but you don't really trick people. I mean, if you really wanted to trick somebody, you'd have to get creative. You'd have to do something that would be borderline, against the spirit of the game. So there's really nothing that I could think of that you would do that wouldn't just be like, almost in bad taste.
For example, back when the Gengar was out with Poltergeist, they would guess maybe how many trainers you had in your hand. I remember something I did once was I was playing a game at Nationals, and if I had, I think, 3 trainers, supporters, stadiums, whatever, Poltergeist would have done enough to knock me out. So I could see the guy really thinking about it, like, which attack do I go for? If I get the Poltergeist, it'll be so huge, I'll win the game. And I noticed that he was doing that, so I kind of looked at my hand, and I counted out 3 cards, and then I rolled my eyes a little bit, and then the guy picked up on it, and he looked at me, he goes, Poltergeist, and I show him 2 trainers.
You baited the Poltergeist. There you go. That's about the shadiest you'll see from a good guy like Kyle Sukovich is moving cards in his hand. So not catcher and putting it on the top of the deck or something, right? Funny. That is an element, I guess, where that could come in use. But like I said, it's very infrequent in Pokemon, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's true. All right, well, I think that's pretty much going to wrap it up. Do you have anything else you want to say to the people out there?
No, thank you for the time. I enjoyed all the questions. I'll try, if you guys had any questions that I didn't answer, if you want to just put it on my Facebook wall, if I have a chance, I'll get back to you tonight. But thank you for the time, Kyle.
Yeah, and
soon. Chicago Marathon will be pretty tough with me, you, and Ross, and a bunch of other good players.
Yeah. Now, is there anywhere that people can reach you? You said Facebook. How about Twitter or anything else like that?
I don't use Twitter too much. I try to respond to Facebook messages other than something asking for a deck list, because that kind of just hurts the game more than it helps. But I friend everybody on Facebook. You meet so few bad people in Pokemon that I just add everybody, and I figure there's a 99% chance they'll be a cool, friendly person.
All right, well, thank you, Jason, for joining me on the show. I really appreciate you stopping by. And for everybody watching, this is just the first episode of Behind the Cards. We're going to have more people soon. The next person I have lined up is actually Sammy Sakum, which is another big player. So look forward to that. And otherwise, just want to thank everybody again for watching. Thanks again to Jason. And have a good night, everybody. We'll see you next time.
All right. I look forward to seeing Sammy. That'll be good. And I like the collection of your Pokemon collection grows every time I see your room. You just keep adding and adding.
The Snorlax and the Pikachu, they've been here for a while.
All right, but you got a poster now too, and I think I see another Pokemon item on that thing. I know that Green Bay isn't purposely isn't accidentally facing this way either. I know you want it.
All right. Good night, everybody.